Hey everybody, this is Bruce with Habowskistudio. Welcome to part 3 of enlarging a plein air painting. In the first two parts, you saw me use oil stick in conjunction with oil paint to build it up to this uh, level right here. And in this video, I'll be overpainting all those areas with thicker paint, more descriptive brushwork, and that sort of thing. Uh, so most of the video will be in time lapse showing that. Certain parts that I feel are important will be shown in detail with real-time commentary. The time lapse parts, of course, I'll do voiceover in the editing process. So we're going to get started on this painting. And the palette I'll be using, I'll go over it again and mention at the end of this part 3, is burnt umber, titanium white, cobalt blue, ultramarine blue, cad yellow pale, cad yellow medium, alizarin crimson, and cad red light. I'm not looking to, I don't want this video too long for you guys. So you'll see me progressing with getting this with thicker applications of paint. Most likely I'm not going to finish. I'll probably get to 90% to try to keep that time span short for y'all. And I want to thank you for joining me. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook, check out my website, all that good stuff that you'll see in the description area of the video. Okay, let's get started.
Hi everybody. I hope you've been enjoying this little mini series with these 3 parts. This is the conclusion. I don't normally do this sort of video. Occasionally I like to try to explain more of the in-depth process, especially with this technique of enlarging the plein air painting and working with the oil stick at the same time. So I know probably a lot of you like the shorter videos, and I do tend to try to do more of those, but just like to try to shake it up a bit, and let me know what you think, and comment on the content of the techniques, see if they help you. And now we're going to get to some commentary.
Still using sort of I got a size 3 round that I'm using to put little dabs of color next to one another, sort of an impressionist technique. Just mixing up some pale yellow, a little bit of cobalt, burnt umber, and I can get some more earthy greens. I'm not looking to fill this in as a dead shape, so to speak. Kind of putting flecks of colors in there, and I can brighten that up if I wanted to. Later on, I can go with a smaller brush and put in the final little touches. And in other areas, like over in this tree area here, I can mix a little ultramarine blue. I haven't cleaned off my brush from this color, but I'm putting enough of the new color and it will be enough of a change. And in the other parts that you watched, this glare coming off this roof is pretty strong. So to facilitate when I put that lighter tone of roof on, I'm also going to make it a little darker green. And we went over this in the last parts about cutting around the roof shape, kind of creating some dark tone. And this is pretty wet along this edge from me painting the sky here. Not a whole lot, but so I can get away with barely touching and rolling the bristle brush to create an effect of leaves along the edge of the trees without getting too overdone. Mixing in over here. I'm not looking to have, again, a dead shape. I'm scumbling lightly over what was there before to give some texture. And you might want to soften, as things progress, we might go back and soften some of the shape to bring more focus to other areas. And I still like this lighter green to separate these here. Getting into the light yellow, just a touch of white to that. And just touching barely this color here so that you get that effect. I can lightly wipe off the paint without dipping it in terps onto a paper towel. Pick up some more straight pale yellow. Little bit of white into that, brighten it up, and I can put here if I want even more. Barely touching, recutting some shape of this tree next to it. Doesn't seem like a lot right now, but again, as I keep going, I'll intensify that. Now I'm going to get a little cobalt blue into that yellow. And go ahead and scumble over this. Recut some new leaf shapes around that tree. Kind of a cooler blue a little bit. And put a little more cobalt in that. Key it just a bit, scumble over what I just did. And again, like I said, I might simplify some of these shapes later to provide focus on other parts. And that's okay, I can do that. I'm going to go ahead and get that tone I want of the house, the roof of the house, and really want to bring that out now so I have some comparisons. And using my maul stick to steady my hand. I'm going to go ahead and paint all the trim first, and if I feel it needs to be reinforced here and there, because it is mixing a little bit with the blue that I painted into the shadow of the house, and that'll help with having it sit in the painting and not looking like it's pasted on top. And I'm planting and pulling. Don't go like this. Don't put your brush down and go back and forth. You'll disturb too much of what's under there. So paint this. Got the trim down the side. Because you really want to I'm kind of like, as I'm getting close and painting details, then I go back like 4 feet, 5 feet, kind of lean back and see if it's enough of what I need. I'm going to go ahead and plant and pull this, redo. Call that good. There's some minor little cleanup here I'll do, but get the idea. Now here's where I'll plant, pull. So it's breaking a little bit on the textured canvas, and that's fine. We can have this as smooth as we wanted, transitional wise, but you can always do that. But if you did it too much and then you want to reclaim, that's where you get into trouble. Now I'm going to redo this blue shadow there, straight ultramarine. Little white, now a little bit of this reddish tone, which was umber and cad red light, to dull down the intensity. And I tester stroke because I want it the same, somewhat the same value, maybe a touch lighter. So a little more white into that. I want it to be a different value than the side of the house. Just splitting that dry line with the wet roof paint there to have it not be so harsh. Don't worry about going over the powder pulls. You can always clean those up at the very end there. I'm going to have just a little bit of variation within this. It's very subtle. Camera's probably not picking it up. just to have a little interest. Okay, now I'm going to work on the windows with the same idea of working into the wet paint, and then I can keep putting more, if it's too muted and blending a little too much, I can keep adding some thicker window paint and have it be a stronger presence without looking pasted on.
Now I want to apologize in advance. As you can see, the window is already painted in. The clip that I thought I filmed had some issues with it, but you can see that I've also added a chimney. I just felt it needed some other elements to feed into the whole compositional thing. And here you can see me working on that little, I've changed the building on the right, made it more of a pronounced barn with a little more interest than the plein air painting. And that's what's neat about when you enlarge something. It kind of takes on its own life, and that's the important part. You're not making an exact copy, because as you can see, I made just 3 hay bales instead of the 4, odd numbers. I tend to like those more, but when we're painting outside, we just tend to get caught up in a different set of problems, so sometimes we don't see that effect at the time. So something to keep in mind. And now we're about to join back in with some commentary from the studio as I worked on the painting.
So you can see how this is quite the process. Repainting over the oil stick, there's a lot of little bits where the paint went over the texture of the canvas, and of course starting on a white toned canvas, if I had to do it over again, obviously I'd use umber or something, but that's what I had at the time, and I wanted to experiment, see what it was going to do, and I will from now on, most likely, unless it's a very light toned painting, start on a toned ground. Now I'm just taking some of this little cloudiness here, the very veiled sort of cloud cover, and cutting in. Started with a mass of this tree here. Now I'm going to try to create some interlacing of very fine leaves and such by just very lightly dragging over the paint that's here, and as I drag over this green, it will intermix a bit, but I still use that for bits of the tree to suggest subtle variations and tiny bits of leaves. Use it around where I can. Obviously I want to take care of this blue line from the oil stick from before. Rinsing my brush. I rinse it in a brush washer with the screen. First I use a dirty pool of turps, get the initial color off, then I go into the brush washer bath with the screen, and then I have a old cotton towel that I very lightly get to absorb the dampness out of the brush. That's what I have here in studio. Picking up some more. I'm going to go ahead and work on getting some of the obvious blue oil stick marks out of there. Cover them up. And very lightly, kind of with impressionist dabs, the edge of the tree to suggest fine edge. And then I could go back and forth as another layer if I wanted to, when this dries, to reiterate some of the greenish leaves. But I'm going to experiment with this for now. Get it to a likable stage, and then leave it, work on other parts of the painting. Again, this isn't real dark greenish tones, so I don't have to go too much of a darker value than this and still have it read right. If this was very dark like this in here, you'd want to make this color a little darker Otherwise, because of what's surrounding it, otherwise it's going to look too light and paste it on. Certain areas I'll strengthen to suggest areas in the tree canopy here, I guess you could call, just to pull out some fine tree branches. Trying to suggest more than really get in there and draw, but certain areas with the limbs and such you want to define carefully, and then other parts can be more loose. Now as I get down into this area, I want to get some darker tone because the tree's behind there.
Yes, remember those bits about when you do this technique of with the darker tones. Don't want them too dark. You don't want them too light. The key is not to make them look pasted on. Same when you're working with cutting in some lacy leaf shapes in the lighter tone of the cloud area. So something to keep in mind. Just practice that as much as you can.
Now I'm just going to start restructuring the road with some tones. A little bit of dark, like shadows of ruts. Lighter tones, pull out, soften, that sort of thing. Just to get some darker aspects in here. Really, in some places, putting heavy paint to suggest texture. This is where it can get very busy if you're not careful. So trying to put just enough information working on putting these lighter scumble layers over patches of dark that are already there to make them pop. Okay, I've gone ahead and worked on the power poles, applying some highlights and such. I, of course, now will have to put in the power lines and that sort of thing. And like I was mentioning earlier, there might be times when you might smooth out some areas. And I decided to go ahead and smooth these together a bit. Now I'm just going to work on a little bit of some rim lighting to give you an idea of how I'll punch up the piece. It will not be finished in this last part of the little video series. I mentioned that before. It was more about showing you how I started out with some oil stick and playing around with that a little bit. And now I'm just going to get some hints of a little bit of rim lighting. I did soften some of this back up. I didn't want to compete with some hardness. I'm going to do a little more here in these three main items. So I'm going to get my brush here and just in some areas, some straight cad yellow pale, because it's going to intermix a little bit with the wet paint already there. Just wanted to simplify those a little bit. Now with the little bush here by the hay bales, going to put a little more warmer yellow mixed with the cad yellow pale and a bit of ultramarine blue. A little more cad yellow pale with that blue still in there. A little more white. I'll of course be working on this some more. Nuance. And this helps set off against the hay bales there. There, I kind of like that. And a little touch over here. Touch more of the umber ultramarine blue. Straight ultramarine blue mixed into that. There we go. A little more ultramarine blue here. Just want to pull that out a bit. I'm going to pull this bush around a little more here. A little bit of straight umber in there. A little bit of ultramarine blue. And I'll finesse that some more later once that dries. And of course I have tree work to do over here. But I just wanted to show you guys how I'm sort of finishing up the little details. I'm going to soften this edge a bit. Always reclaim it if I want to after the whole overall effect. Here's the transition of the plein air sketch. There's that. And the painting. Hope you enjoyed it. Okay, so I'm going to conclude this three-part little mini-series on enlarging a plein air painting. As you can see, it's coming along pretty good. I'll do some more adjustments. Of course, I have power lines to put in, that sort of thing, but it was more about showing you how to maybe experiment with different tools like I did with mediums, like I did in the beginning with the oil sticks. That's useful for different things, and this layer was all oil paint. No oil sticks were continuing to be used. So I want to thank you for joining me, and don't forget to subscribe if you liked the content that I provided here. There are a lot of other cool videos on my channel. Check it out. And follow me on Facebook and check out my website, www.habowskistudio.com. And I want to thank you for joining me. Till next time, bye.